Well, hello there, and welcome to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today I'll be looking at the M18 Hellcat, an American Rank 3 4.7 battle rating tank destroyer. Now, as with all reviews, if you want to see a certain part of the review or don't have time for the whole thing, all the various parts are timestamped down below, so feel free to go click off to whatever part you want to watch. But if you want to hear the garage portion, let's get started. So the M18 Hellcat is considered the most effective U.S. tank destroyer of the Second World War. It scored a higher kill-to-death ratio than any other machine in the conflict, at least for the Americans, certainly. About 2,500 of these were built, and it also boasted the highest top speed a armored fighting vehicle could attain until later on when the M1 Abrams was produced, and it set the mark. This thing could go approximately, I think in perfect situations, almost 60 miles an hour, which I believe is something like 90 kilometers an hour. In the game, this top speed is marked at 80 kilometers an hour, which easily makes this the fastest tank in the game, and it's likely going to stay that way. But, why is it so fast? 17.7 tons, 460 horsepower. The engine in this thing was actually designed for aircraft, but they just slapped it in some tin foil and turned it into a tank destroyer. But like I said, rank 3, 4.7 battle rating. This means this thing at worst will see Tigers and maybe early Panthers, the very earliest Panthers, if matchmaking is being very unkind that day, but Tigers certainly. 17.7 tons, like I said, it's extremely light, and 460 horsepower gives it a power-to-weight ratio of about 22.6, which is pretty insane. 80 kilometer per hour top speed. Now, this is, in my opinion, the fast. It's difficult to. Let me just say, I've never reached 80 kilometers in this tank. The fastest I've ever gone, I think I managed to get it to like 50 something. And that was going clean downhill. This tank accelerates really quickly to like 45 kilometers an hour. And then it takes a long time to accelerate past that. It gets there so fast, though. And if you go downhill, it's very clear that the upper end speed isn't really capped. It's difficult to get going that fast on like rougher ground or not on like paved roads and things like that. So it is really, really fast. What you can do with all this engine power, you won't go 80 kilometers an hour, but you will be able to accelerate and go in reverse extremely quickly and shift and move and traverse the tank very effectively and very quickly, making this thing really agile and extremely difficult to pin down. You'll see that in one of their clips where you can use the forward and reverse speed of this tank to just pop in and out and move to positions and very easily outperform other tanks' turret traverses. And that's one thing that American crews did during the Second World War is Hellcats would blitz the flank of enemy armor and just beat their turret traverse. They were so fast that they could get around and then shoot the side armor. Now, obviously, this requires you to be pretty close to the enemy, but if they catch a tiger or a couple tigers out in the open, these tanks are going to blitz and pretty effectively, given the right circumstances, outrun that turret traverse and put shots into the side of their tanks. Now, because it is so light, it can only go up a 21-degree slope. And that kind of means more now because a lot of the maps have slopes that this Hellcat will have struggled to get up, but with enough speed cooked up prior to engaging on the hill, you should be able to go up them. Turret traverse of 24 degrees a second, pretty good. That's pretty standard for American turrets, especially at this battle rating. Sherman's are, well, let's just look. Turret rotation of the M4A2, I don't have the upgraded turret traverse on this thing, so it's 17 seconds. Most of them, however, are 20 to 24 range. It's much better than the M10's 4.5 degrees, that's for sure. So the turret moves very quickly, and the tank itself moves very quickly. Vertical guidance, you got 10 degrees of gun depression, 20 degrees of elevation, very standard for American tanks. The best gun depression you can achieve in this game, if I'm not mistaken, is 12 degrees. So, it's not the best, but 10 degrees is more than enough to get the job done. And it's very rare that you'll find a situation where 10 degrees of gun depression isn't enough to do what you want to do. Which brings us around to the armor. What armor? A well-thrown rock will penetrate this tank. You don't achieve the type of speeds this thing can do and the type of acceleration, the power-to-weight ratio in a tank this small without losing a whole ton of armor. And when I flash up the little armor thing, you can see this, 25.4 millimeters. Even though the gun mantlet does cover a good portion of the front of the tank, and there's an additional mantlet here, you can be penetrated here. It's not difficult. I've been penetrated through the front of the turret. I've had 50 caliber machine gun rounds penetrate the front of my turret on the sides. I've been killed from the front by every AAA known to man. And from the sides, 12.7. It's basically paper. The armor thickness of this thing ranges from 0.2 inches to 1 inch of armor. This tank is very poorly armored, but the whole goal is for this thing to be basically a race car, where it just goes as fast as possible and uses speed and maneuverability to avoid incoming fire, or just never be in a situation to take incoming fire because it moves so quickly. So when you're playing this thing, it follows along the same line as the Walker Bulldog and the Chaffee. You don't want to get hit, you want to be flanking, you want to be elusive, and you just generally want to overwhelm them with just your ability to shift and move and stay out of their firing arc. So armor, I'm not going to spend very much time on the armor. There's nothing here, right? You can't angle and make it all of a sudden god tier. This is still 30 millimeters. They're going to penetrate and they're going to do lots of damage to your tank. When we pull up the little X-ray, the issue that this tank has is that, one, this crew member is poking above the tank. He's manning the machine gun here. He is very easy to kill. And because of how thin the armor is, the front of the turret, you can actually have AAA can just spam the front of you and just kill you very quickly. If someone penetrates the front of your turret, it's very likely that they're going to kill your crew members in the turret, which really bodes badly for your tank. It's likely to knock you out. If they shoot you in dead center of the front of the hull, the explosion certainly will kill 4 of your 5 crew members, which is a serious problem. Ammo racks, it's almost to the point where almost the layout of this tank really doesn't matter. You got a front mount transmission. If you hit the front of this thing, it's likely going to just explode or take such severe damage or get set on fire that you're very neutral to which outcome happens. Most of the time it's either it takes 1 shot or it takes 2 shots. There's no trick to the armor. If you're trying to fight one of these things, just plant it in the most solid section of armor you can find. If they're moving very quickly, you can sometimes get bounces because of weird angles and things like that. But a majority of the time, just shoot it wherever. Just don't shoot this part or this part. Try and shoot it in the meat of the tank, below the turret, in the side of the turret, through the front of the hull, even just anywhere. Just shoot it, and it'll blow up. The armor's, there's not much to talk about. And because of that, the layout really doesn't matter, because you're going to penetrate it regardless. Alright, but the speed is really great. The armor's non-existent. So, for a tank to be really good, in my opinion, you need at least 2 things working for you. And 2 of them are kind of mutually exclusive. If you're really fast, you're not likely to have a lot of armor. But the one thing that's completely that isn't mutually exclusive is the gun. You can be heavily armored and have a good gun, or you can be really fast, have no armor, and a good gun. So let's look at the gun. It's a 76mm M1 cannon with 54 rounds of ammunition, and on top you have a 50 cal with 1,000 rounds of ammunition. And you have plenty of ammo choices. Alright, so the standard shell you get is the M62 shell. 7 kilogram shell, 792 meters per second muzzle velocity. That's alright. That's pretty average for this tier. Penetration 10 meters, it's 127 millimeters. 500, it's 116 millimeters. 1500 is 97, and 2000 it's 89. So kind of what's that mean? Well, with this shell, let's say you're facing the front of a tiger. You can penetrate him if everything goes right, out to maybe 1,000 meters or so. After that, it becomes iffy. If you have the side of his tank, you can penetrate him basically at all ranges. 89 millimeters is enough to penetrate the side of a tiger. So this is a pretty good shell. It's, in my opinion, this is the shell everyone uses because, one, the damaging effect. It's an explosive damaging effect, which is really, really nice. It gives you that one-hit punch that you really want when you're dealing with tigers and German machines and things like that. And it's just all around a very solid shell. It has good penetration for this battle rating, and there's just nothing to complain about it. This is what I used most of the time I was playing this tank. The HE shell, don't bother with it. It's a 76 millimeter HE shell. For some reason, it has higher muzzle velocity than the standard AP shell. It is lighter though, so that's probably why. 7 millimeters penetration. There's just not much high explosive packed into this shell. It's just not useful. So I wouldn't use it unless you're shooting at like AAA trucks with no armor. But you know, this shell, machine gun fire works better than an HE shell, so I just wouldn't even bother carrying them. M79 shot. It's the first unlock. It's basically a higher penetration round. It's 2 kilograms less, same muzzle velocity, and at 10 meters has 155 millimeters penetration. 500 is 131, 1500 is 88, and 2000 has 72. Now another thing to note, and this is kind of true for ammunition in general, the heavier the shell, the better it maintains its penetration at range, right? This shell is slightly heavier than this shell, and you'll notice that 2000 meters, this shell has 72 millimeters penetration. This shell has 89. So, although its front-end penetration isn't as good as the M79 shell, its back-end penetration is much, much better. And my argument against this shell is that at 10 meters, there are basically no targets that I need 155 millimeters penetration for. The front of a tiger, it's about 120 will do. M62 shell is 127 millimeters penetration at 10 meters. So it has enough penetration where this gun's penetration is the best, I guess. It's kind of, this shell is a better penetration shell at close ranges. It doesn't have the damage effect because it's just a fragmenting shell. And I just didn't fire very many of these just because the situations where this shell is better than the M62 shell are so few and far between that I couldn't spot them. You know, it was difficult to decide, okay, I need to be using this shell right here. So most of the time I just didn't carry it, especially once I unlocked the M93 shot. Now the M93 shot is a pure APCR round, and at 10 meters has 240 millimeters penetration, 208 at 500, 147 at 1500, and 124 at 2000 meters. This shell, on the other hand, it is much lighter. It's 4.3 kilograms, and 1,036 meters per second muzzle velocity. So the issue with this shell is that at range it might become difficult to penetrate, just because you're starting to get to the point where your penetration is very close to the actual thickness of the armor. So if they're angled, it might be an issue. The M79 shot doesn't deal with that any better. The M93 shot, though, does. It has exceptional penetration at all ranges when compared to its sister ammunition. So my loadout will generally be M62 shells, a majority, and then maybe 10 or so M93 shots for long-range engagements with like tigers and things like that. There are very few situations where at close range you need 240 millimeters penetration, so the M62 shot gets it done. But at long ranges there are situations where you need more than that, and this is the only shot that has better penetration than the M62 shell. So that's why it's kind of the default backup when this shell doesn't get the job done. So it's an APCR round, so you have to pay attention to that, and it will do less damage when it hits, but the difference is it will penetrate whatever you hit generally. The M62 shell at long range may not. So your loadout generally will consist of M62 shells and M93 shots, which is pretty good. Rate of fire, with my mediocre crew, it's 7.5 seconds, and it's pretty respectable. It's certainly, having it be below 8 seconds is pretty good, because it means if you kill or wound the enemy gunner or the enemy driver, you'll be able to get another shot off before they move, or before they can return fire. So that is pretty important. Now, that pretty much sums up the garage portion of this review. As an overview, this well-thrown rock will penetrate this tank basically everywhere. Your armor is not there to save you. It's there to keep the mud off the driver's face and the rain off the engine. It's basically all it's for. This is a very fast, very maneuverable tank, much like the Bulldog, where you want to flank and you want to be aggressive and generally elusive. That's how you get your kills. And hopefully the replays can kind of show you how that's done. So without further ado, let's move on to the replays. So here we are in a realistic battle, driving the Hellcat. And myself and this other Hellcat are going to have a little bit of fun. So on Eastern Europe, this is one of my earlier games in the Hellcat. I don't have the M93 shot unlocked yet. Instead, I'm using the M62 and the M79, was it? The non-APCR pen shell. And yes, I mean, I don't like it, but maybe there will be a situation where I need 155mm penetration. I don't think it will be, but just in case. And I haven't come close to running out of ammo in this tank, so. But first thing we're doing is we're blitzing out over onto the flank here to take residence in this little village and hopefully spot tanks as they move across the field to oust us from this position. Basically, we have a very strong position here with cover and concealment, and the enemy are going to have to move across an open field, or we'll be able to shoot down on them from here into the city. So just taking up a little position. There's a Tiger moving in the open. There's another one behind him. And there's a Panther also on that bridge. But you can see how quickly this thing moves in reverse. I basically fired the shell, and probably before, even if he saw where the shell came in from, I was back around this corner before he could fire. Certainly before he could stop and properly aim his gun. There's another one way out there. He just fired at someone else. Unfortunate, I didn't hit where I wanted that one to, but I'm just using this house and this bush to try and... Oh, there's one. There you go. See, at this range, this shell's perfectly adequate. And there's no reason... I don't think I'm going to fire one of these pen shells this entire game. There we go, nice hit into that Tiger. Got his driver. Another shell on the way. That one went a little high, which is a little unfortunate. But I can just keep spamming away on this guy. There we go. Nice, another nice hit, set him on fire. But he's backing up down over the ridge. Something you have to get used to now is the fact that when you use your fire extinguisher, your whole crew stops whatever they're doing to put out the fire, which, you know, is realistic. But before, you could extinguish the fire while moving and things like that. Now, when you extinguish the fire, I can't speak English. You get stuck in a situation where your crew aren't doing anything for a certain amount of time, and it makes it difficult when you need to be maneuvering. So not having a super quick extinguisher finger is not a bad thing nowadays. Myself and this other Hellcat are taking up residence here, and there are a few tanks who are trying to come across the field here to try and oust us. Now there's a Panther over there who, as you can tell, I hit his front plate, which is certainly not going to penetrate. With the M93 shot, I very easily could penetrate his upper glacis, but with this shot, no. But I do send a shell right through the front of his mantlet and cause his crew some serious problems inside the turret. Now he's dropped arty on me, which is an issue when you're driving an open-topped tank destroyer. He's dead, which is nice, but I need to get up out of this arty because it's certainly going to become a problem for me if I let it hit all around me. First shell set that tiger there on fire. Second shell, oh, there he goes, burned up. And here comes the Artie, and you can tell I was actually pretty far away and I still took some damage from it. But this little village is slowly outliving its usefulness. We still have a fair number of... I believe this tiger might be the last one who's over here, and then we need to push down and attempt to take their spawn area. Got his driver. You'll notice that there is a Hellcat actually sitting behind their spawn. That was unfortunate. So my rate of fire should be faster than him, but he has managed to hit my horizontal drive, which is going to cause some serious problems for me. And he's dead. But now I'm repairing. I'm just going to wait it out here, because this is actually a pretty safe position now. Yeah, and you can see the damage it did. I believe he just shot me square in the turret, and I lost a couple crew members. But we're back underway. Now you can see there's another Hellcat pushing aggressively lower on the field, or farther afield than me. And from this point, we're just going to slowly push and strangle their cap, and then just wait for them. Now he just got killed by a AAA, Whirlwind. And that's pretty consistent. Whirlwinds, any AAA truck is a serious problem for the Hellcat. Simply because it doesn't, it just doesn't have the armor. You know, a lot of tanks, at least their front armor can deal with it. Nice bombing run by our P-47 there. But the Hellcat just has no armor. I would say there's enough armor to keep the rain off the crew, but the thing is it's open top, so rain gets on the crew. The engine won't get wet, but the crew certainly will. And you can see there's just a horde of American tanks just coming on in, and we're gonna have some fun with the cap circle. It's an SU-152. I'm way up on the hill. He hasn't seen me. First shot goes in, gets his cannon breach and his commander. My rate of fire is much shorter now. Or longer, because I believe I lost my loader. But second shell goes in right through his ammo rack and causes him some problems. Now these enemies have already been killed, which unfortunate for them, fortunate for us. But the game is won. We're going to win this pretty handily. And that little sequence in the village there should kind of show you what, well, at least one thing that this tank is very capable of, which is shifting and moving with, that was unfortunate, but this tank is very effective at engaging targets and backing into cover or finding cover very quickly because of how powerful its engine is relative to its weight. You know, a 22.5 power to weight ratio is really, really good. And it allows you to accelerate really, really fast and really take advantage of some situations. You just have to do it intelligently so that you don't get hit and you don't get knocked out, because one solid hit from any tank this thing sees and your game could be very, very over very quickly and very brutally. But we've capped something the Hellcat is very, very good at is capping early and maintaining cap presence, because you can get so many guns to a position so fast that it's very difficult for slower tanks to kind of push you out of there. A lot of times what I see on a cap map is that a ton of Hellcats just rush the cap in all the flanking positions, and next thing you know the German tanks are caught in an open field and just getting massacred. It's pretty sad, but it's just the way this tank is designed. Speed is always gonna, in War Thunder more so than, well, in War Thunder more so than World of Tanks, because you don't have a health bar. It's like you either need a lot of armor or you need no armor. Like if you don't have enough armor to get the job done, you don't want, you know, the minimum armor to almost get the job done. You want zero armor because, one, the shell might overpenetrate, but two, you'll be so much faster. And speed, if you can't have tons of armor, you want tons of speed. If you're not a T-95, then you want to be a Hellcat. Because it's just, it's just the way the game plays that the tanks that are in those extremes are probably going to do pretty well. I don't think a tank that's kind of mediocre in both is going to struggle a little bit. And, you know, the Hellcat's really fast, so it's going to dominate tanks that aren't as fast and can't get to positions as quickly. And especially when those tanks' armor is certainly not an issue for the Hellcat. And Tigers, I'm looking at them, you know, the Tiger just doesn't have enough armor to deal with this gun. So, and it's slower, so you have some problems there for the Tiger players. I do foresee this thing getting up battle rated. I think this thing at 4.7 might be a little low. The same thing with most American tank destroyers. But anyway, let's move on to the next replay, shall we? So here we are in another realistic battle. This is on Mazda. And as you can see, there's a cap way on the other side of the map, but I have no intention of going anywhere near it, because that is not the direction the enemy are in. The enemy spawn is much closer. Well, it's not closer, but it looks more enticing to just drive across this field, get up in these tree lines, and just have a go. So that's what myself and a couple of members of our team, the balance of our team is going to the cap, which is realistically where we should all be heading. The cap is where you win the game, not the enemy spawn point. Because, yeah, the tanks spawn there, and if you kill the tanks after they spawn, then you theoretically win, but the issue is if the enemy hold the cap and you can't break them out of it, you lose. So it's usually a good idea to take the cap and then be ready to receive the counterattack. Using binoculars to kind of give myself a higher vantage point here, but I'm going to move out along the flank and join up with another Hellcat over there. Nope, you can see a tank moving across the field there. Gave him a good one, that's for sure. It's an IS-1, it looks like. You can have that one. And there we go. That was nice. But there's all kinds of enemy tanks over here. It seems like the enemy had a similar idea. Just the issue is they're doing in slower, heavy tanks. And we're doing it in fast, basically light tanks. I mean, this is a tank destroyer, technically, but it follows along the same idea path as the Bulldog and the Chaffee. So when I think of the Hellcat, I really do think of it as a light tank. It just has a very, very potent gun. Oop, enemy IS-1, yep, IS-1. You can have that one. And I'm going to actually take hits here. And I wasn't sure where. I was like, what just shot me? What? But I'm going to keep moving, and I'm going to take another hit. I'm sure, actually, oh, someone tried to shoot me. Run into that tree and have a little weirdness. But I know there's an enemy up over behind that hill because I just saw him. And then that ridge over there actually leads towards their spawn. Now you notice that we have 3 Hellcats around the enemy spawn, and oh, Tiger. He got the first shot off, and I was very lucky that that didn't outright kill me. I think he just shot my turret square in the front, and it did some serious damage. Because he got my gunner. And without a gunner, I'm not going to wait around. What I'm doing here is I'm waiting for him to turn his turret to deal with the Hellcat over there. So we can basically do a tag team on him. He's turned his turret facing someone else, so I'm just going to pump a shot in and then back up really quickly. So his return shot has 0 chance of hitting me. And now I know he's reloading. He's probably not looking at me either. So I come around, and no, he's not looking at me, that's for sure. And someone else knocked him out prior to me getting that shot in. Well, we own the cap. We have tank destroyers all over the place, and we're now pushing on the enemy spawn. This game is over. And with Hellcats, the games end pretty quick. The issue a lot of, well, mainly German teams have is that most people play the Tiger at a 5.7 battle rating, which is the upper end of the Hellcat's matchmaking. And if you think, and it's just, the Hellcat is just built to destroy Tigers. I mean, that its design purpose was to be dealing with new German armor. Same design purpose as the M36. The M36 was designed in 1943 to beat back the Tigers that American military knew they were going to face, thanks to reports from North Africa with British engagements with Tigers. So it's just these tanks are designed to be fast and to wolf pack and hunt. It's too difficult to build a tank that can withstand the firepower, and it's too expensive. So why not just make a really light tank that has a tremendous gun and just outflank everything and cause some serious problems that way? You get a little squad of these things rolling around and they can cause some serious havoc. And don't have to worry about silly things like getting bogged down or things like that. They just kind of go really fast. And something else to note, and something a lot of people got in trouble in World of Tanks because they would use the speed of the Hellcat to get out in very advanced positions and then get massacred because they're out of touch with their support and there's just no help for them. The thing about the Hellcat and War Thunder is that's still a thing, but I found that it's less so the case because it doesn't go to its top speed. It goes to about 60% top speed very quickly, and then takes a while to get up from that. So you have run into a situation where if most people are spamming the same tank that can go similar speeds, like if everyone's driving Hellcats, it's difficult for one Hellcat driver to be isolated, right? Because everyone's driving the same. That's kind of the way it is right now at the 4.7 battle rating. Is the American teams are all driving either Wolverines or Hellcats, and the Wolverine isn't a slow tank. It's just not a super fast tank, and when compared to the Hellcat, it's plenty serviceable in terms of speed. So you have a situation where if everyone's driving tanks that are pretty quick, it's very difficult to get in a position where you don't have support or you don't have backup. Now, eventually this will change, and less people will be driving this tank because of a new tank that's been introduced or whatever. And when that happens, you'll have to be a little bit more careful, like you are in World of Tanks. But as of now, you can kind of just have a go and cause some serious problems in this tank for your enemies. And it's a really fun tank. It's certainly not a tank you'll be disappointed in when you have to grind it. It's very fun, and it's a very easy tank to have a good time in. So without further ado, let's move on to the final review, shall we? Alright, so final opinion time. What do I think of the M18? To me, the M18 it's a very fun tank. Once you get over the fact that there's zero armor, and if you get hit, you're going to die, and you start playing with sort of a reckless, fast and furious mentality, it's very, very fun. The gun has plenty of punch. The gun can certainly deal with everything you face, and this machine is just tuned to have very quick, nasty encounters with enemy tanks, where you just run up next to them, pump them in the side, and move on. There's a reason you see this thing spammed so much, because at 4.7 battle rating, it's really, really powerful. It's faster, it has great turret traverse, and there's all kinds of things this thing can do. It can get to positions long before enemies can. There's very few things this tank struggles to do other than bounce return shots. And I mean, if you're getting hit, you're going to be in a world of hurt. A platoon of these things, 2 or 3 of them, is devastating. Just consistent fire. It's just horrifying to enemy players. And I've been on the receiving end of things like that, and it's not fun. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching this review. I hope it helped. Hope you learned something, and hopefully answered some questions if you had any. As always, please leave questions, comments, concerns, and stuff in the comments section. I'll be more than happy to answer them, read them, things like that. And yeah, that's going to be it. So thanks for watching. I've been Corny Swiss. I'll see you next time.